Alright guys, in this video I want to talk a little bit about the story aspect when it comes to games, because it's not usually my focus. I prefer, to talk about gameplay and such, but I definitely don't dislike the narrative aspect, to be clear. I just think it's a bit secondary compared to the core gameplay of a game. But I have noticed sometimes that even if I don't like a game too much, I think I'm kind of this game is okay. It's kind of meh in terms of gameplay. It's playable, but it's nothing special. I have noticed in the past that it was mostly the story that made me go forward with it. For example, think of a game like Deadly Premonition. The gameplay is very mediocre. The push to go forward came mostly from the story, and the story, the narrative, the setting, the characters. Yeah, that was pretty much a very iconic game, almost exclusively for that, because the gameplay was very subpar in a lot of instances. Also, the technical aspect was quite bad, to be honest. Even considering, yes, it was a 360 game, but yes, it looked like a PS2 game just in HD. And yeah, sometimes the story can lead you forward, can make you want to go forward into a playthrough, and it has happened to me in the past, which is why I wanted to make this video, because sometimes the story will push you to go forward into a game, will push you to play it more, to see how the narrative evolves, where the story goes in terms of direction, how the relationships between the characters evolve, and so on. And like I said, sometimes it can also be the only reason you finish a game, because you want to see how the story ends. The problem I have noticed, yeah, all this to say, yeah, the problem I noticed is that a lot of the time, especially in new games also, so new IPs, the developers will try to shoehorn in a sequel bait. They will either try to leave the ending open, so to leave themselves a window in which they can maybe take the story in an eventual sequel, or they will straight up have the game finish on a cliffhanger. In the past, I did talk about two games that I really liked that did end kind of in a cliffhanger, kind of with an open ending, which were Metalgearrising and Farcry3 Blood Dragon. Now, Metalgearrising, also, yeah, before I go on, this video will contain mild spoilers, but honestly, I will talk about games that are at least 10 years old. So, I don't know, if you still haven't played them, like, wait until you played them and come back. But if you're like me, that you don't really care much about spoilers, because, for example, now I'm playing Last of Us, like I said in one of my previous videos, and I know how the game ends. I spoiled myself the story. Not all the story, only the ending. I know how the game ends, but I personally don't care much about singular spoilers, because when it comes to the story, it's also about how you get to that point, not just about the event per se. So I'm curious to see, in terms of story, how you get to that ending, the whole journey. But yeah, going back to what I was saying. So if you don't care about spoilers, or you have already played these games, keep going. Otherwise, come back to the video later. But yeah, I was saying about Metalgearrising ends with an open ending, because Raiden, it is said that Raiden has found his own war. He has his own war to fight, but you don't really know exactly what that war is. You don't even know exactly if he ever got, if the charges against him were ever dropped for killing all those police officers and such. So you don't really know exactly what's going on, what's going to happen, especially in a sequel. So they left it kind of open for the sequel, and of course never happened, sadly. And in Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, instead, you get in the ending, you kind of get a big hint that your helper during the game, the Dr. Darling, was actually up to no good, considering the way she looks at the camera, which is quite creepy actually. The more you look at it, the creepier she becomes. But yeah, there was a clear sequel bait that of course never happened. And the other two games I want to talk about are Quantum Break, which is a very underrated game. If you haven't played it, I suggest you do, because it's one of those games that has a very strong narrative, because it treats its themes very maturely. I really liked some aspects in the story. Also, the whole branching paths were a very interesting concept. Only a couple of them were really important, though. I think it was only one of them, only one or two, that really shaped the story with big differences compared to the other playthrough, to the other choice. So I definitely recommend you play it, especially if you haven't. Also because it's very cheap and it's very old at this point. That's another game that is going to be 10 years old in a couple years, I think. And yeah, that game ends in a cliffhanger too, or better, cliffhanger. The ending is very open-ended, because your character, you get to see how the main character, which is called Jack Joyce, which is played by the guy who was Bobby in X-Men 3, Iceman. I think his name is Sean Ashmore. But yeah, I mean, you know the guy who I mean. Yeah, you get to see like how he is probably affected by the same illness as the bad guy. So he has to find a cure probably. And you get presented with sort of a choice like you did in the previous parts of the game. If you played, you know what I mean. Except that this time it's the main character, because during the game the main bad guy takes the choice that shaped the playthrough, while in the ending you're given the choice, but only virtually, because you don't get actually to make the choice, because the game is over. You only get a glimpse of the two possible roads you have ahead of you. And that was clearly a sequel bait, but the problem is that Quantum Break never got a sequel, sadly. Also because, yeah, it finished with a big how can I say, with the main character pretty much saying his love interest that I will come back to save you, because she dies. I think her name was Beth Wilder, and the main character clearly liked her. But she dies during the course of the game. Since the game involves time travel, the main character, in one of the segments in which he goes back in time, I think, and the time is frozen, she whispers to her ear that he'll come back to save her, because he couldn't during the game. And I mean, that's clearly a sequel bait, but the problem is that the game never got a sequel. And it's very sad, because Quantum Break was a new IP. The gameplay played, it was kind of like an in-between between Max Payne and your cinematic 3D game like Last of Us. Or if you wanna get another comparison in, you could say it was a more cinematic version of Control, like it was Control's prototype, because you can see the gameplay, some ideas in the gameplay that were in Control came from Quantum Break. And yeah, at this point the game will never have a sequel, sadly. Which is very unfortunate, because, like I said, the developers really like to put sequel baits in their fucking new IPs. But don't do that, because you don't even know if the game will be successful. So, like, the first game should be about a self-contained story. Then you finish the story and that's it. If you get to make the chance to make a sequel, you make a sequel. But it's not gonna be impossible or hard to come up with something to move the story forward in the end. They always find some kind of narrative appeal to do that, especially in comics. But don't leave that such of a big of a sequel bait, because it just feels bad. Like if I get involved, passion, if I really like the characters, the narrative, the story, and passionate about it, it sucks when it never gets a sequel. It just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. And another game that did this was the Splatterhouse reboot or remake, how you wanna call it. I mean, it was a reboot, but it was clearly a retread of the first game in the arcades. That game went through development hell. There's a whole story about it that I haven't really checked much, because, to be honest, the game was okay. It wasn't a bad game, but it wasn't a good game either. It was an okay God of War clone. What made it stand out was the aesthetics, the gore, the extreme gore, and some interesting acting from the guy who played the mask, which I don't remember what his name is. Okay, this is me going back in time and editing in the video. Just to let you know that I meant Jim Cummings is the voice actor of the Terror Mask. And yeah, the interactions between the mask and Rick, which is the guy who wears the mask in Splatterhouse, are very funny. It's I really like that type of interaction where you have the main character that has a voice in their heads, kind of like Johnny in Cyberpunk, to give you an idea, a voice that only the main character can hear. So they have these conversations in their head, their back and forth, which is, I think it's very engaging, especially when the two personalities clash well with each other, which is the case in the Splatterhouse reboot. And yeah, I mean, as you all know, if you've ever played, watched or finished Splatterhouse 1, the game is a self-concluded story. Yeah, it has sequels, but the original game, the arcade game, it didn't have any sequel bait. I mean, you could argue, yeah, it has a sequel bait because the mask gets back together, fixes itself, but you could also interpret that as just a stylistic choice, just as a way to see, you know, like they used to do in the horror movies, where they don't make it clear whether the killer is dead, and that's the same thing when the mask gets back together. The director just put it there as a way to troll the player, or to wink, you know, maybe we could do a sequel, but it wasn't really an open-ended. The game is over, like Jennifer died, your girlfriend died, you couldn't save her, and that's it. Well, instead in the reboot, they actually did put a sequel bait in, because in the reboot, if you ever played it, Jennifer doesn't die, but her soul gets stolen and replaced with the soul of a demon. So it is ever implied that in the sequel you will have eventually have had to go into the nether realm, or hell, or whatever it was, and get back her soul and put it back in her body, which is kind of what eventually ends up happening in Splatterhouse 2 for Mega Drive anyway. But The only difference is that in the reboot, Jennifer doesn't die. She just gets her soul replaced. And I mean, as you all know, that game never got a sequel, sadly. So why, like as I'll repeat it again, why the fuck do they keep putting sequel baits in games they don't even know if they'll ever recoup the costs? They'll ever get the chance to make a new game. It doesn't make sense to me. First, make sure you make a good game with a self-contained story, and then, if you get the chance, like try to come up with an interesting narrative lead for the sequel. Because this is, I mean, all this to say, it's just insulting to me. Like, you get me involved in the story, in the world, and then you just drop everything, whatever. Who gives a shit? That's also why I try not to get too involved with the stories in media, because I don't want to get disappointed. And also, it's just like a fictional story, so there's no point to. There's really not much point to get involved too much, especially nowadays because the stories mostly suck. But in the few cases that the narrative really catches me, it sucks. That and like I said, they keep doing this because it has happened over and over again. It's not just these 4 games. It has happened quite a lot. I'm sure you'll come up with other examples as well in the comments if you get to watch the video. I mean, another egregious case was Shenmue 2, which, like, it took like 20 years to get a sequel and a Kickstarter, but the sequel, I've heard it wasn't very good. I really liked Shenmue 1 and 2, but I haven't played 3 because, I don't know. Too much time has passed, I'm not really interested in the story. Plus, I heard that Shenmue 3 sucks, so... But yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of other cases like this. I mean, let me know in the comments if you have a game yourself that you really got disappointed and never got a sequel. And what do you think about the sequel baits in games that are never even sure to ever get a sequel? Do you like them? Do you mind them? Or what? Because I surely don't like them. Like I said multiple times. But yeah, all this to say, I don't like them. And as usual, let me know in the comments. Let me know which games really did this for you. And I'll see you in the next video, as usual. Thank you for watching and bye bye.